Harry and Meghan are profiting from the legacy of Nelson Mandela. That's according to one of his granddaughters. They've presented a documentary series on the South African hero. Robert Jobson's royal editor for the Evening Standard and joins me on the programme to discuss it. Hello, Robert. Happy New Year.
And to you, Vanessa.
So tell me, what is the problem here? What does Nelson Mandela's granddaughter find to object to here?
I think it's the lack of consulting that they've had with the family. The problem that Harry and Meghan have got, Vanessa, is that the Mandela family itself has been at war with each other ever since the great man departed us, and over commercial deals, etc. So I think his granddaughter here is probably pushing it a little far. They're saying that they're making potentially millions of pounds out of the grandfather's words. Frankly, if they were anybody else other than Harry and Meghan, I can't really see that there'd be any complaints going on here, because many people have made documentaries about famous people and used their words. Many people have done films about them and profited from it. So I can't really see that she's got a point. The Mandela family itself actually is quite, as I say, it's not unified in the way that they deal with the great man's legacy.
And so this is a documentary series that Harry and Meghan have sort of co-produced with the cooperation of the Mandela Foundation for Netflix, and their involvement is the production of it, but also the narrating and the presenting of it. Is that right? That's
correct. They're at the beginning of the documentary, and they are both quoting Nelson Mandela, which I personally can't really see that they're doing anything wrong. It's just that I think there's been such fallout from the six-part I won't call it documentary, docu-series, docu-drama about their lives, quite a lot of it negative, and I think that they're not liking this. I mean, we've also had Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who also featured. She's sort of distanced herself from it. I think it's all part of the sort of negative fallout from the docu-series on their lives, really.
So this is not to be confused with that. This is a 7-parter called Live to Lead, and it's about personalities, characters that they think have contributed to leadership in the world. One of them, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the great judge. Another one, Nelson Mandela, it seems.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that was worrying Netflix, at least if they've been correctly kind of analysed about all of this, is that these projects might be terribly worthy, very, very sort of serious, a bit short on laughs, and might not rate very highly, because people might feel if they watched them they were being lectured to or at rather than entertained or engaged. I mean, I don't know if you've had the privilege of wading through this particular Live to Lead show, because I haven't seen this one.
I've seen some of the previews, to be fair, and some of the names there are great people. So I just think that they're suffering, really. I mean, when you were talking about all those negative points there, it sort of almost summed up what's happened to Meghan and Harry in the last 18 months. The reality is that all of these people are worthy of documentaries. It just seems that because of their, I don't know, the fact they seem to be, they can't resist being part of it. If they were simply the production company and silent, I don't think anyone really could criticise them for making documentaries about famous people. But yeah, it is a little bit, I mean, considering how much money they're supposed to have got from Netflix, the figures do seem really huge. Some of these projects do seem decidedly dull. That's the problem.
I think that's what I was getting at. Is it the sort of thing that anyone's really going to enjoy watching, or is it the kind of thing that they might compel you to watch for your history O-level, but you might really deeply resent and not want to watch it
Harry
all?
I mean, I luckily did history at university. I think Harry didn't even get an O-level in history. He was just about scraped his art. So I don't know what qualifications he necessarily has to be a documentary filmmaker on great leaders of our world.
I suppose, though, in fairness, when you're being paid an awful lot of money and when you are a huge international name,
he's got the money. He's drawn the money.
But the company might insist on you being part of it. When you say, they couldn't resist being part of it, I mean, in fairness to them, let's be fair, they were probably compelled to be part of it, don't you think?
More than likely, Vanessa, because if you're paying them that sort of money, they want to get every single cough and spit out of you, don't they? That's the reality, and I think Netflix are making sure they're doing that. I mean, I'm sure we both agree that wonderful docu-series, as some people see it, could have been done in a lot less than 6 parts.
Got to say, though, that it did well. I mean, it's rated highly, hasn't it? People all over the world have been interested in it and buy it. I mean, it seemed to go on forever as far as I could see. It never seemed to end. But I was made to watch, tranches of 3 episodes straight off, consecutively, which I don't think even Meghan's mother would really want to do. And I did do it twice faithfully, and I watched every last living second of the stuff. But I mean, it did well. It did well.
It did okay. I don't think it's gone as well as people were saying. I think initially there was that big boost on it, but I don't. It's dropped out quite quickly. It did well for their share price. I think that's what Netflix were looking at for a short time. But I don't think it's done as necessarily as well as they'd hoped. I actually do feel there's a sense that Meghan and Harry have really believed, rather like Diana, that she could carry. They would carry the supporters a long way. And I don't think they have that same resonance. I really don't.
I wonder whether that matters if the kind of bedrock of support for them in the United States particularly remains. Because in this country, you talk to expert after expert, like your good self, and you can see a sort of jaded, enervated ennui in every word you have to say, like, OK, all right, OK, what else do we have to say about them? How much more?
I mean, I agree with you, and I'm not one of these people that's continually want to knock them, but I do think that they can... they've got to come out with another message rather than just whinge about your family. I mean, I think if they were simply an ex, army officer and an actress, their story about their breakup of the family wouldn't really be that interesting. So I do feel that they've got to change the record.
Well, I wonder whether you do feel, therefore, that Spare, which is coming out on Tuesday, might change the record or just rev the record up a heck of a lot. Because if Harry tells us hitherto unknown details about how he felt when his mother died, he may well tell us what we don't know, which is how both boys felt about Camilla, for example, who, of course, was their father's mistress. They know that. We all know that. We don't know whether relations were cordial or whether they hated her in the same way that Diana hated her father's wife, Reign, originally. I know they became friends in the end. I mean, we don't know any of that stuff. We don't know how they really felt about Camilla, who's now the Queen Consort. Maybe if he tells us some true stuff about that, that will take it up several notches.
I think we do know. I think we do know that they weren't particularly fond of Camilla, but it's whether he puts it in print. Remember, this book has been delayed and was supposed to come out around about the same time as the Netflix. I think there's been clearly been some revisions going on. But one thing's for certain, if he doesn't come out with some revelations, the money that's been paid for this will cause someone to be losing their job at the publishers. There needs to be revelations in this book.
OK, I need to ask you one more question. I'm not asking it disingenuously. I really wonder about this. We know, don't we, that Harry was left a great deal of money by his mother. I think it was something like £13 million or £11 million.
Remember, you only have to work out that, I think the divorce deal was around about 18, 19 million, wasn't it? And that she split the money between both her sons. Okay. And that would have grown, and that became free when they were 30.
All right, so I'm pretty close when I say some 11 or so million.
Oh, no, more,
so he left a lot of money by his mother.
Yeah.
I think he was left something by the late Queen Mother. I don't know whether that's confirmed or not confirmed. We think so.
I don't know, it's because it's none of the... I mean, we're pretty sure on his mother's legacy, but in terms of the Queen Mother, no, we don't know. But
so you know where I'm going to with this.
Yeah.
So in other words, and we think that Meghan, to her credit, had amassed a few mil as well. I think something in the region of $3 million or maybe more from all her acting gigs and everything else. In other words, if you put all the dosh together, plus the money that his father did continue to give him, even though he said I was cut off financially by my dad, it turns out that wasn't true. He wasn't. So it's quite a lot of money from any perspective. Let's say it's 20 mil, or let's say, I don't know, it's 30 mil. It's a lot of dosh. Why are they so desperate or so incredibly turned on by or so keen to have such a prodigious amount of money flowing in? Haven't they got a lot of money already?
Well, they undoubtedly have, but the reality is they've decided to live a very expensive lifestyle. They've got security they have to pay for. That's not being paid for anymore. And they live a certain way. I actually don't know. I mean, if they wanted the private life, the quiet life that they wanted, then there's really no need. They could have just gone off, as they explained, and had quite a nice life, really, and just been free and just do what they want to do. But obviously, it still matters to them to be current. It still matters to both of them to have a voice. And that voice, I think, over time will disappear, actually, because if you go back in history, like Edward VIII, when his time, he wrote a book about his life story on the eve of the coronation of the Queen. And it all just disappeared, and he became less and less relevant as he got older. And I do think that's what's going to happen with Meghan and Harry. They have a shelf life, and they're trying to capitalise and squeeze every pip out of it, I think.
Robert, thank you very much indeed. Good to have you on the programme. Robert Jobson.